Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. The emergence of a bright young talent, a goal for Harry Kane, and debates around which stars should play and where. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Thomas Tuchel's England reign got off to a winning start, but how much can you really take from a 2-0 victory against Albania? Well, listeners, we are about to find out. On today's show, we'll also discuss refereeing, more woe for Scotland, a manager who could be a philosopher, and find out how the Times covered other England managerial debuts. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the reporter and tactical analyst Hamza Khalik-Lunat, and the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robertson is back. Back! You missed Thursday's show.
Sorry.
And, as you revealed before we started, you didn't listen to it, so you missed the kicking we gave you at the start, which is a huge relief.
Oh, okay.
Because Martin might have been very...
I'll be sure to listen back now,
Might
Tom.
have been very rude about you. But it was because we teased the reason you weren't here, which is a thing we're going to discuss at the end of the show, which is your pivot to becoming a referee.
Not really.
Well, you listen, we
Get your
don't
hopes
know.
up, listeners.
Don't know. We've already sorted it. We sorted it on Thursday's show. We realised that Gareth Southgate is out of work, and we need a new former footballer who was a defender for blah blah blah.
Oh, right.
So
cheers.
you can go
really,
and
you've binned me off.
you can go and become a referee, and we get Sir Gareth on the show. That'd be nice.
It's very logical.
Very
swap,
logical.
really, isn't it?
Very logical. Very logical. Anyway, speaking of Sir Gareth and England, let's talk about England, shall we, Alison? What do you think the answer to that question is, Alison? How much can we really take from a 2-0 victory against Albania? How long do you think we'll be able to talk about England 2, Albania 0? How long before we get into Gregor's new career as a referee? 2 minutes? 5 minutes? 20 minutes? What do you reckon?
My answer to your first question was F all.
Oh, right. So, right, Gregor, tell us about being a referee.
No, seriously, I think whether we can talk about it and what conclusions we can draw is more interesting than the actual game, which in itself means, oh my God, we're back on this treadmill of England will qualify for the big tournaments and the group stages do not present much in the way at all of a challenge. And then you have a new manager who claims he can make England have a style, be exciting, give more than they've given before. But I could say that, you could say that, anyone could say that. It's impossible because you play against teams who, A, are just thrilled to be playing at Wembley or thrilled to be playing against England. They have no expectations when they're playing against England, so they can be as boring as they like and have a low block and be defensive. They can be whatever they want to be and there'll be no criticism of them. And England go in against them thinking they can create patterns and impose their will and personality. But that requires something other than what successive England managers have done in such matches, to be perfectly honest. And it ends up becoming stodgy, and you will, no matter how undemanding the game or how defensive the opposition, if you've got the wealth of talent that is available to any England manager against a team ranked, whether 100 and whatever, 200, 400, you will win. You will win because it's a bit like FA Cup football. Eventually they get tired. They don't have all that backup of sports science and technology and week in, week out elite football to get them through the full game. So you see this sort of, you start thinking, oh, come on, Albania, you can do it. You start thinking, wow, this is pretty good, isn't it?
Do you have the Albanian flag outside your house on Friday?
I do own the Albanian flag.
Yeah, of course you do, we know.
And but they flag, in the end they flag, and someone with a bit of talent like Harry Kane or you name them, they will be able to pick a spot, or there'll be a pass that can be picked. I mean, the Harry Kane goal was nice, but actually it came about because the guy who should have defended it just, I think, was absolutely knackered and just mistimed his header. So that is what will happen. So I don't know that there's any point at all in all this soul searching and interviews and big pieces about what Tuchel wants and doesn't want. You want somebody who just comes in for the Euros or the World Cup and then works out how to beat Spain and Germany and France.
So you're saying we should have kept Lee Carsley through the whole qualifying, and then come
or some bureaucrat. It doesn't matter.
Or you,
or me,
or Hamza, to the start of the World Cup, and then gone right. Who's about? Tuchel, he's free. Someone who's won trophies.
absolutely.
Do you
No,
fancy it?
someone English. I'm with Martin Samuel on that. Someone English,
Right.
because otherwise it's cheating.
So
But
Eddie Howe, don't
you
go
like-
on holiday after Newcastle. Come and win us the World
Yeah,
Cup.
that's a reasonable
I like it.
invitation.
Revolutionary. I'm not against it.
That'll be too much work. There's like EU time directives against that. You can't have it.
Just when I thought this show couldn't get off to a more exciting start, EU time directives in the mix. Gregor, I wanted to ask about Miles Lewis-Skelly because that's the young player emerging. I say emerging in my intro. Obviously, he's already very much emerged for Arsenal this season. But taking on that England place, scoring a goal and showing the kind of confidence that he has shown all season is one of the bright sparks for Thomas Tuchel and England from that game.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like his bit of swagger.
Yeah.
There's something about kind of Jude Bellingham of him as well, and that's.
I'm so glad you said that.
That's
I was
at a
going to say
different
that,
level.
and I thought Gregor will say I'm stupid for saying that.
Bellingham's at a different level. Like,
Yes.
the thing I always like amazes me anytime I watch them playing for Real Madrid in the Champions League or anything. It's just like how he's certain that he should be there in the centre of attention. He's unwavering self-belief. It's remarkable. But Lewis-Skelly does have a bit of that about him. You know, as he's 18, he's making his England debut, and there was no fear, none whatsoever. And it's, you know, the goal crowned it. But there were lots of moments where he's quite unconventional. I think he's quite unconventional for a fullback too. He's not he's quite a good runner with the ball. Like, he's good at cutting inside and driving inside. That's not really a fullback thing. It's these days you're either inverting or you're the wide man. He's quite creative.
That's my only worry with him, everyone, is that he's so good, and it's that emergence as a fullback that you then start going, oh, great, well, he's 18, he's really good, he's really confident, he plays for an elite team. That's left back sorted for the next 10 years. And that actually, in 2 years, he'll be playing as a central midfielder for Arsenal, and we won't have a left back again. What do you reckon to that?
I mean, Arsenal don't play with left backs now, so that's a good starting point for him. That he's not really a left back.
Significant issue, yeah.
But he's shown already that he's got all the attributes to be a good defender. So that's the thing. Everyone said there's going to be bigger tests than this, defensively in particular. But he's one of a few options that have emerged. As you know, Hams has written about Lewis Hall as well.
Yep.
So it was a problem area, and now it looks like you've got a few real players of real potential going forward, and Lewis-Skelly is definitely one of them.
Hamza, you weren't at the match on Friday. You were covering the England under-21s, which we'll talk about in the second half of the show. But you were at both press days, the preview days, with Thomas Tuchel and managers, including yesterday before tonight's game against Latvia. Alison kind of touched on some of the points there that we discussed in Thursday's show about Tuchel talking about excitement and all this kind of bit of a kind of PR drive, which every manager has to do, of course, not just an England manager, but any new manager. What has it been like being at those preview days, press days? What has the kind of mood in the camp been like? You obviously spoke to Declan Rice yesterday, as you can read on the Times website now. Has it felt like a kind of new manager vibe, even if we're not seeing a new manager bounce on the pitch straight away necessarily?
Yeah, because of the way that the players are talking about each other and the manager. So they're quite clear that Rice promised yesterday that we're going to see a New England team, something that's going to be exciting. But both he and Kane actually spoke about leadership and how there wasn't enough leadership at the Euros. Kane said we were a bit light on your leadership there, which is interesting, right? Because it's one thing for a player to say that. It's another thing for the captain to say that. So then you ask him, well, did you do enough as a leader?
Yeah.
He said, well, I did what I could. But as in, I think what he was getting at is that he needed more from the group, because before the tournament, Gareth Southgate made the decision to take out a few older players and bring in a few new ones. And there's been this ongoing discussion about Jordan Henderson and what he brings. But it was noticeable that how highly Kane and Rice spoke about Henderson, what an important role he played in training in the bits that we could watch, and then the warm-up to the game as well. You'd see him with the first team trying to leading it with Dan Burn. So I think those are the qualities I think that people undervalued, well, supporters at least undervalued from him at Liverpool. I was like, oh, you got those are good players. This Henderson guy, he can move the ball around, he can score a few goals, but why is he the captain? Was often a question posed. But again, the players would always talk about his qualities as a leader. And remember the COVID matches, right? You'd always hear him screaming and shouting and cajoling players, and that was something that Tuchel picked up on as a failing in the Euros, that England weren't when moments went against them, they weren't together as a team. They didn't interact with one another. They didn't come together, all that sort of stuff. So there's been a lot of emphasis around that and building that team spirit. And then Tuchel as well has said, okay, that's the first thing. I want a more ruthless sort of nature to this squad. So you had the very sort of fatherly sort of figure of Gareth Southgate, who did a lot of work to sort of detoxify England and make it a really welcoming place. And Tuchel has come in and said, it's great, really welcoming, but we just need that edge back, though. We want a bit of needle. And that means I might be dropping certain players, because I can't. I've got loads of number 10s, but they can't all go to the World Cup. It might mean that we are now having what Declan Rice called uncomfortable conversations between each other, asking us to raise our game, that sort of stuff. So there is a sense of drawing a line under the Southgate era, and interestingly, Tuchel has made his bet. It's quite clear which direction he's going. If it comes off, fantastic. But there is also potential for this to sort of
when
be a
you
bit
say
dangerous.
quite clear, I think I know what you mean. But in terms of style, or in terms of
His manner.
his manner, is that what you're talking
The
about?
latter,
In terms
yeah.
of like, I'm ruthless. I don't care. I've been hired to win this World Cup. Not bothered who I upset.
Well,
Yeah.
he's not English. He doesn't give a monkeys, does he?
No, he's a
That's the most
Anglophile.
interesting. That is the most interesting thing to have come out of it. Look, in terms of the football, we're trying to polish a turd here. Like Alisson was right at the start.
Well,
There's very little.
that's cheeky for the Scotland fan to say.
No, we don't need to polish it. We don't try. It was like the thing that struck me watching this game is a lot of international football is crap. Like you know, watch some of the
There's
games.
a headline for the
some of this
podcast.
games this week. No, some of the Nations League game, like France, Croatia, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Denmark, Spain, Netherlands. They're clashes of big, like decent footballing nations, right? More than decent, and they were great games. So, but they're rare in qualifying, very rare now. And so what England have is what England face most often now, is what Alisson set out at the start. Teams who do anything they can to stop them scoring. And we should also remember that Gareth Southgate took a big step forward in that he started sweeping them aside with ease. Before that, England often struggled in those games. Perhaps that's to do with the Premier League racing away from a lot of other countries in Europe. But also, I think Southgate deserves credit for that. But a lot of it was still dull. We still saw the paper aeroplanes. Like, you know, even if it was 5-0, we still saw it was boring. So you got to kind of, there's no blame, no blame associated with Tuchel for it not being like swashbuckling football against Albania in his opening game. And it's probably going to be the same against Latvia, let's be honest. Even if they win 5-0, it's like, it's Latvia.
So isn't he naive to say that he can do that?
I don't know if he means he can do it in this game. He can say he wants to see more, which he does want to see more. He wants to see them move it quicker and stuff, I think. But I don't think we're ever going to see England playing thrilling football in the majority of their qualifying games. It's how he prepares them for the big tournament. That's what Martin Samuel wrote about after the game. It's the truth. Everything between now and the World Cup, almost everything, is basically fluff.
Yeah. And what do you think, to Hamza's point from being in those press conferences and the pieces that Hamza and Johnny Northcroft have written about this manner that Hamza talks
That's
about?
the most interesting thing, yeah.
As a former player, you know, played for lots of different managers, that idea that as players you're having a go at each other a bit more, and also in an international context where you maybe don't know each other, you know, Marcus Rashford and Declan Rice have never been played together on the same club team, about that idea of being a bit more ruthless with each other. And that Tuchel, it's great news for you, Gregor. You're not going to have to listen to even more and more debates about how many number 10 should we get in the team. He's just going to pick one by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Well, the proof will be in the pudding. You might get drawn into trying to fit in these best players.
Yeah.
But, in terms of like ruthlessness, I think we can go too far with that too. I would imagine what he's been saying to the players is, I want you to demand more from each other. I want to see more of you guys putting pressure on each other to win the World Cup. This is what we have the potential to win the World Cup. I watched you guys in the last two tournaments. I don't think you ever really believed you were going to win. Like, you got close. You got very close. If you believed it a little bit more and you really put demands on each other, and, you know, we play with a bit more of what he thinks makes the Premier League and English football great, i.e. the aggression, the speed, the intensity, you can win it. I'm not in the room. I think that's probably been his message.
There was something quite interesting that Harry Kane said to that. He said that what they struggled with in the Euros was the expectation. He said in Euro 2020 and then the World Cup, there wasn't quite the expectation that England would win.
Yeah.
But they felt it, and that was the weight that that held them back, which makes you think, given you've got this guy in explicitly to win the World Cup, that's going to be a pretty big sort of lodestone to shift. If you struggle with expectation, then the expectation is higher come next summer. So you've got to fix that then.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Alison,
maybe that's what people like Henderson, Walker,
perhaps, yeah.
They may be past their peak, but they are winners and proven winners, and they bring that experience of how to sort of attack tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah. Alison, we're going to talk in the second half of the show about an interview you did with Casper Hjulmand, the former Denmark manager, and lots of very philosophical things that he said both about the game and about wider society. Coming back to this idea of Tuchel just going, I want to win, and setting out a kind of philosophy in that sense. Is that actually good? Like to Hamza's point about, was clear lines here, no big kind of debates around, oh, how good is this England team? How good can they be? He's saying, you've got world-class players, we've got winners, let's go and win the World Cup. Because that is a complete change, isn't it? For all I praise Gareth Southgate, that is a complete change. And it is a complete change in psyche for England football fans. Hamza talked about the previous two tournaments. Oh, maybe we're good enough. Is that not quite refreshing for a manager to have that say? And also perhaps he's able to say it because he's not English.
Well, I think he is able to say it because he's not English. I think there's a lot of things he can say and feel and convey because he's not English. This is a mercenary being paid money to prove he's a great manager and can come in and achieve something that. I bet he was weighing it up, thinking, who are the players I've got available? Actually, on paper, this group of players should be able to win a tournament, a major tournament. So it's not like he's gone in saying these things because he's manager of Albania. He's saying these things because he's going to be manager of a group of players that are fated around the world and play in the best league in the world. So logic dictates that they should be winning the biggest trophies. And he seems to me quite a logical man. And so he's saying what is obvious. But he's also been employed to do that. He has not been employed to cure ills or create new relationships between the media and the players and between fans and the players. He's not there to solve anything other than the one problem, which is that England have fallen short since 1966. And he clearly thinks, I've got enough there to say these big things. I mean, it would be undermining what I think his interview process, what he said in the interviews, if he didn't say that. And if being more cautious and more caring and thinking about the bigger picture hasn't brought England success, well, then you may as well go down a different path and bring in something new, which is this very strident, let's say the obvious and believe in the obvious. But when Hamza was saying, the players have been echoing what the manager has said about a bit more needle. If Thomas Tuchel had walked in and said, there are not enough flowers in the dressing room, Declan Rice would have come out and said, I have brought in a bouquet. And I have made sure that all the young players have brought in daisies and daffodils.
What do you think Declan Rice's bouquet of choice would be? Tulips, I think. Good, solid, variety of colours, can play lots of different roles. Everyone likes a tulip, don't they? That's kind of Declan Rice in a flower, I think. Listens if you've got any ideas about what Declan Rice...
Don't ask me for flowers.
Come on, Gregor, don't pretend you don't know your flowers. But we should also say we're talking about Alison and Martin Samuel on previous shows. Thomas Tuchel's been paid... Gareth Southgate was paid a lot of money as well. The guy didn't do it for free.
No.
He was paid an awful lot of money to be England manager as well. Most people who are England manager get paid a lot of money. So that's not just part of it as well. Gregor, I wanted to return quickly to the theme of Thursday's show when I was discussing with Tony Cascarino and Martin about, the team chemistry, the little bits in training that Hamza witnessed by being at the open training, the holding hands, the going around in a circle, keeping the ball up. Because
it's a drill.
It's a drill. But Tony and Martin...
A happy drill.
Tony and Martin were slightly dismissive of it on Thursday's show, I think. And Graham, who's a listener, got in touch to say, Tom, team chemistry is so important. Don't be so dismissive. It's how you get a good football team, Graham says, and also just like the team chemistry you have on the podcast.
Oh.
Which I thought was rather nice, wasn't it?
It's a good way of getting read out.
Producer Neil giving a sceptical eyebrow raise from across the room. But in terms of that team, is it all just about the kind of nice PR of a start of a managerial appointment? Or is there actually anything in this idea of, we're now talking on this podcast, and we talked on Thursday, not about what's on the pitch, we're talking so much about what's off it?
Of course it matters. Yeah, I mean, look, Henderson is probably there more for his effect on the chemistry of the team.
Vibes, man.
His influence. Grealish was spoken about as a big loss in the summer because he's a big character and he's someone who, like, you know, he exudes positivity and laughter and, you know, fun. That's a positive thing. So when you have players like that, they're important, particularly when you're away in a tournament for a month or whatever. Of course that matters, and it seems, you know, in retrospect, and the way everyone's talking about it, that was a mistake. Southgate made a mistake omitting those two players and maybe one or two others. As much as anything, for their influence, like, away from the pitch. So of course it matters, yeah. And when that is always a risk when you're introducing new players, and particularly young players. You know, you don't know how that's going to affect the chemistry overall. The team needs to evolve, and clearly the most important thing is the way they perform. But you know, Martin's always got that saying about where, I think it was Roy. He told me the story a couple of times where Roy Hodgson was asked. I think it was Roy Hodgson. It was like he was picking his squad and got down to the last.
Oh, it's your story, isn't it, Alf? About Roy Hodgson picking an international squad.
And he said he didn't know who to choose the last player, and they're like, who'd you like?
Yeah, who do you like as a person?
And he said, you know, pick him then, because you're probably not going to play.
Yeah.
So there's truth in that. It's like,
if you'd known that, I could have been an international footballer. Just
you
hype,
have to like
man.
you, Tom.
Vibes, man. Just go in there and just give everyone the revs. All right, lads, do you want some tulips? How's it going? Haribo, anyone?
Yeah, no, look, it's true. It's true. You see people getting contracts late into their 30s because they're a positive influence.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always about.
Is that what went wrong for you?
Yeah, I'll just go out of there quick. Yeah.
Too moody.
So yeah, of course it matters, but other things matter more.
Yeah. Well, there you go. 20 minutes, guys, we managed there. 20 whole minutes. And we've still got another game to come. Alison, guess who's going tonight to watch England as well as Johnny Northcroft? We're not just sending one Scot to go and watch England. We're sending two listeners. All those years, all those tournaments, you've had to listen to Gregor Robertson on this podcast talk about, oh, you've got so much talent. Bloody hell. Now he's going to be there in Wembley reporting on England. Just how excited are you, Gregor?
Well,
as excited as Jordan Henderson?
If you open the Times tomorrow, don't expect to see too many positive vibes.
Oh, that's what we don't like.
Of course, I'll be totally impartial.
Excellent. That's Johnny and Gregor side by side with their Scottish flags draped around their shoulders. Wonderful stuff. Speaking of excitement, let's talk about England under 21s, because there is a man around this table who is bloody excited about an England team. Hamza, you bloody love the England under 21s, don't you? What is it you said as we were walking into the studio today? That Friday's game against France was the best game you've seen all season.
Yeah, it's the most fun I've had all
most
season.
Fun you've had all season? In life or in your job?
It's my job.
In your job?
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I do the match list. I've sent you some good games, but...
Yeah, all right matches.
France 5... could be better. France 5, England 3. Loads of goals. Loads of young talent on show. Presumably that was the source of your excitement.
Yeah, and the way that they played. It's very rare, as you guys have just alluded to, right? It's rare that you get to have matches between top tier teams outside of tournaments. So when you do, it's important that, especially in developed football, that you test your players. And Lee Carsley going into this match said, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to change our system. So they went 3-4-3. They've not played it before. The idea was to use a 3-4-3 back just before he was appointed senior manager. So he wanted to do this earlier, but he didn't get an opportunity to. And just to give you a flavour of what that back three was, so left centre-back was Rico Lewis, centre-back was Taylor Howard-Bellis, and right centre-back was CJ Egan-Riley. Then you had a midfield four of Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson. Ahead of those in the box was Harvey Elliott and James McAtee. Right wing-back Alex Scott, left wing-back Jaden Philogene. Liam Delap up top. See, you're like, whoa, that's pretty sick, right? And
Gregor's smiling. Gregor's smiling. He's excited. Maybe I should send you to the under 21s instead of the seniors.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
And then the France team was composed of all-stars, as in you were looking at this guy's amazing, this guy's amazing, this guy's amazing. And in my match report, I was like, these guys are really, really good. And I just started listing them. I was like, that's half the team that were outstanding. There were so many good France players. So what you actually got to see was top-level players against top-level opponents. And a few guys who are still clearly in that. So when I say top level, I mean the players that are ready to make the jump from under 21 into maybe senior football. But all these guys have regular first team minutes. in their leagues, pretty much from both teams. This was one of the few teams that actually had more first-team minutes in their starting 11 than England's. So this was a really experienced France team. Ekitike scored a hat-trick. Ryan Cherki was amazing. There's a discussion going on in France at the moment. They're very angry with Didier Deschamps because he hasn't picked Cherki yet, and he could technically play for Algeria.
Right.
And they're really worried that they might lose this guy because he's fantastic. He sat Adam Wharton down, sent him for a slide tackle, nutmegged Elliot Anderson. He was so good, so fun to watch. When he arrived, there was a big sort of reception for him from all the fans. The stadium was packed out. But what was really interesting, right? Is
Who does
that
he
you
play
had
for?
Cherki, Lyon. What was particularly interesting about how this game went was there was the French number 8, whose name is Akliouche, plays for Monaco. Lovely big hair. So loads of guys were really good, but he was particularly smart in that. So England were pressing high. They had 3 guys at the back with the back threes, and what he would do, he'd run over from the right side in front of Rico Lewis. And Rico Lewis would think, oh, he's in my zone, I'm going to lock onto him. Then he'd run across Harwood Bellis. And Rico would be thinking, should I pass him on to Taylor? And he would, and then Taylor Harwood Bellis would jump out, and then he would keep running. So I've got to pass him on again. So these guys are getting dragged out of position, and they go with him so far, and they go, well, actually, I don't want to step out this zone. And then he would stand in front of CJ Egan-Riley, and then he would drop deeper and deeper and deeper, challenging Egan-Riley to follow him. And he didn't, and that meant France had an extra player in their deeper areas, so they could play for the press, and then they exposed him with a long ball. It was really, really fascinating to see how these players tried to deal with the situation. And Carsley had said afterwards, he could see what was happening. He said, I wanted to expose the players to this. I didn't just want to solve it tactically because they're not going to learn from that.
Right.
So you had some quite extreme situations, which in a competition, you'd probably say, no, I don't want to see that. Yeah. But it was really interesting to see these players get exposed in that way, the way that they responded. Adam Wharton was super.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when the squads were named, if you look at that team and players you've mentioned there, Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, there would be people, around this table who would be saying,
Delap even.
Yeah, why are they not in contention for the senior squad? But particularly on those 2 midfielders, Wharton and Anderson, how did they get on and how did they cope with that challenge that you're talking about?
They were a powerhouse midfield. They were really good. The wing backs didn't quite support them as they needed to. They wanted to get forward quite a bit, but they are attacking players naturally. I think Alex Scott played there for Bristol a bit, but I don't remember Philogene playing there too much. Anderson was great, fantastic recovering the ball, was getting forward quite a bit as well, and Adam Wharton did everything. He did all the defensive work, made tackles, interceptions, passed forward. He was tempo setting and then giving the forwards ahead of him the opportunities to receive between the lines and do their best stuff. Yeah. He found them in positions that they wanted to receive the ball in rather than in areas that were unthreatening. So I thought that was a fantastic performance by him. And what's particularly interesting about him as well is that he's been playing slightly higher up for Palace recently. And for a while there's been an idea about in the
Another
senior
number
team.
10. Played number 10 for Blackburn.
That's he played left back for the England team during training before the Euros as well, or in the Euros, I think. And the guys at the FA were particularly impressed with just how good a football brain he has, and he was able to fill in there seamlessly. Maybe he would have been better there than Kieran Trippier. So there's an idea about can we have a tempo setting guy? And usually these guys they keep the ball really well. And Wharton can do that, but what he's actually much better at is being really aggressive. If you notice his statistics, if you look at his statistics, he doesn't have a particularly high sort of pass completion rate. And that's fine, by the way. Usually those are descriptive things. If you played loads of safe passes, you're going to get pretty high completion rate. But usually in your deep midfielder, you want them to play a lot of safe passes because you don't want to lose the ball there. But his numbers actually are quite similar to like De Bruyne, Trent, Ødegaard. Ødegaard plays a lot more safer passes, but in terms of progressive passes, he's up there. And what he's doing really well is he chooses the moment to puncture the lines, and even if the pass doesn't get through, it creates a counter-pressing opportunity. So it's always attacking, it's always aggressive. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he might. I think his future might be as an 8 rather than a 6, even though a lot of people see him as a 6.
Interesting.
But yeah, he was really cool. The game was sick.
Hamza's definitely got a bit of the Jordan Hendersons about him, hasn't he? England have lost 5-3 here, and Hamza's like, you were great, you were brilliant, absolutely
Friendly.
fantastic.
Who cares, man? Like, as long as you learn something from it. And
That's true.
There are a
That's
lot
true.
of learnings to take from this, which I thought
Lots
was
of
interesting.
learning.
Surely the learning is...
Spent too much time in Lee Carsley.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but surely the learning is, well, what is the point? Surely the point of this is you're building a team that can go on and win the World Cup.
Well,
But
yeah.
it's all meaningless, isn't it?
For the 21s. Well,
Well, it
hopefully...
isn't. There's
Just
never-
when
there's
we'd got some
never-
vibes back, Alison, you
there's
can't come out with
never
it's
that-
all meaningless.
There's never that translation from what you see under 21 into the first team.
But for example, let's say in the World Cup at some point, Thomas Tuchel says, all right, we've got a specific opponent coming up. We'd actually like to go to a back 3. The players can't say that, oh, God, I've never played in a back 3 in my life, because we can say, you played against France and you got smacked up. But you know how to fill in. So I think
Do you think those players that you saw against France are going to be in Thomas Tuchel's team at the World Cup?
Adam Wharton might, Elliot Anderson might. The rest I'm not too sure, but those two. Rico Lewis will be close. James McAtee's pretty good. He actually said that, interestingly, that Pep will ask him if he wants to go to the Club World Cup then 21 Euros. Delap might be as well. So yeah, there's some players that will be around it.
There you go.
Maybe.
There you go. I'm really excited now for the World Cup quarterfinals. Adam Wharton coming on. We'd be like, clip it up, bring him back. Hamza called it. Hamza called it. Absolutely excellent. I am honestly thinking we should have just started with England under 21s. That's the most hype we've had on the show all day from Hamza. Absolutely brilliant. We've got absolutely loads more to come, I promise, but it's time for a little break, which means it's time for the quiz question. Who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played for Wolves, Everton, Manchester City, West Brom, Aston Villa and Sunderland and scored 1 goal for England against France in a 1-1 draw at Euro 2012? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I've got Hamza Khalik-Lunat, Gregor Robertson and Alison Rudd with me. Gregor, straight back in. 1 pod off. In with the answer.
Julian
Lescott. Nice and easy. Nice and easy. We're going to move on now to the period of therapy on the Game Podcast. Gregor, come in, sit down, take your time. We're all here for you. It's time to talk about Scotland 0, Greece 3. Tell us how you feel.
Not great, Tom.
No.
I mean,
no.
but Greece are a good team, aren't they?
Are you about to be as hyped about Greece as Hamza was about England's under 21s?
Well, they weren't bad. They weren't bad. I mean, I'm trying
Coming
look
to
at
a
the
Premier
positives
League
here.
club near you, Greece's star striker.
Little Karetsis, my goodness, he's decent. Yeah, I liked him.
Scotland weren't very good though,
No.
were they? I was watching this on the editing floor yesterday. Not their finest 90 minutes.
No, probably the worst. Up there with the worst under Clark, which I think Michael Grant pointed out in his report. It was bad. And the thing is, it's like, he's saying it's a bump in the road. And then one thing I've learned as manager of the national team is there are going to be bumps in the road. There have been quite a few of them. We had a little mini run again, but there have been quite a few of them now, particularly unfortunately in the tournaments. And it just kind of struck me again that if we've not got our very best 11 out, we fall quite far short. Like Grant Hanley's now not in the team in League One, Birmingham's team. John Suter is a real trier, but he can't move. We've not got a right back. Still talking about Anthony Ralston. We need Aaron Hickey to come back really quickly. And then even like your big players aren't. Like John McGinn's not really been doing it for a while now for Scotland.
Oh my God. He slagged off John McGinn. It must be bad.
Just from his like lofty heights and the goals, he was always
Lofty heights. Only in your mind.
No, if you.
I'm joking.
Scotland,
I'm joking.
His Scotland record, and particularly in front of goal, is outstanding, but it's not been for a while. McTominay is taking some of that load. I think Michael Grant wrote a piece before this game as well about how we're now a nation without like any strikers.
Yes.
Just do not produce strikers. I think 2 of the dozen goals we scored in the last year were from strikers, and I think another 2 were own goals. So like level with other teams.
Sorry.
And the rest, that
was a little,
yeah.
that was
So
a
the
little
rest-
snigger that you might have heard in the background from Hamza.
the rest come from midfielders, and Scott McTominay is obviously having a good season in Napoli, and it's been really good in front of goal. He had a couple of half chances in the first half, but then we just, defending. it seemed like a real ploy. Like they were smart. They were working the ball really well and then looking for cutbacks into the box, and we just had no marking for it. So, yeah, really disappointing. I'm not so bothered.
Clark stays?
Of course, yeah. I'm not so bothered.
Of course, why of course? You said we're having another dip.
Again, who are we going to replace him with?
Gareth Southgate?
Dave. I'm not so bothered about dropping into the B League and the the Nations League. You have more of a chance of getting a playoff place for a major tournament if you're in at a lower level. But what I'm worried about is we've got Greece in our World Cup qualifying group, so that's it doesn't augur that well, and we've got a tough. We're in a 14 group, so it's was not a good night for Scotland.
I'm not sure that therapy session was all that successful, Alison.
No, I think he did well. Well done, Gregor.
Well done, Gregor. Lots of things to take from it moving forward. Speaking of bit of therapy, bit of philosophy. That's my vague link for this next bit of the show, where we're going to talk, Alison, about your interview with the former Denmark manager, Casper Hjulmand. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, he's a fascinating bloke. I mean, he's most famous to British football fans because of him being the manager when Christian Eriksen collapsed at the Euros in 2021,
but that wasn't his first.
No, well,
first
he was, and you
with...
might have thought, wow, he handled that really well, didn't he? And in fact, he handled it well. His coaching staff handled it well. His players handled it well, and the whole of Denmark handled it very well. But it was this all stemmed from him when he was a manager at a Danish club, and one of his players in 2009. One of his players, Jonathan Richter, was struck by lightning. In a match? In a match.
I mean, that is absolutely
I mean, you can imagine
bonkers.
how you feel. You're in charge. He's part of the coaching team, and one of your players is struck by lightning, and he's in a coma for over a month, and you think,
gosh.
I mean, and they're carrying on playing football matches. So you have to work, as he was saying to me, you have to work out how you play those games, how you guide his teammates through the guilt of playing, or are they allowed to celebrate a goal? And so his view was, whilst the player who's in a coma, he subsequently had part of his leg amputated, and he's still in touch with him, and he calls him one of his heroes. Quite rightly, he's tried other sports out, and he's living the life that he can live to the best. But I mean, he nearly died. But the key for coping with the Christian Eriksen collapse was he was able to work out that all responses are valid. So if you are too distraught to play, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. You're too distraught to play. You can't play. If you want to celebrate a goal and dedicate that goal to the player who's been hurt, that's fine as well. There is no right or wrong. What is the right thing to do is to embrace all responses to a significant and traumatic event. And so he was able to stay very calm because he wasn't having to go through that panic of, what should we do? What should we do? Should we play the game against? Should we carry on playing the game against Finland or not? Is that right or is that wrong? What do we do? And it was really interesting. He said the players, they wanted to play. The game was abandoned, if you remember, and then they played the second half later in the day.
Yeah.
And his players don't remember anything about that match. They were playing purely on.
You're saying Højbjerg took the penalty but missed and didn't even remember taking it.
Højbjerg didn't remember taking the penalty, let alone missing the penalty. They just did not remember anything about it. And so he was left thinking, I just don't know how we're going to progress in this tournament. How do you we've been talking about the intricacies of under 21 formations and the sort of things that Tuchel wants from the players. But, if your players do not remember the game they've just played in at a major tournament, how do you prepare them for the next one? And he said the bizarre thing was the next game was Belgium, and although they lost, he said they played the best football they've ever played because their senses were heightened, their emotions were heightened, they had something to play for, and they felt on the way to the stadium the streets were lined with Denmark fans giving them just lots of love and encouragement. Yeah. And this was a country that there'd been no connection between the football team and the fans. There'd been a pay dispute just before he took over in 2019. And so the people of Denmark were thinking, they only play for the money. They don't care about playing for Denmark. We don't like them very much. So he had a sort of rebuilding job a bit along the lines of Southgate felt he had as well. And so this event, the Ericsson collapse, and the fact the team just, handled it so well.
Yeah.
The fans were so impressed by this. They got to the semi-final on a wave of emotion, really.
Yeah.
And then they were robbed.
Yeah.
They were robbed.
There was a line in it, Alice, wasn't there, where he mentions how important it is to feel loved and to have so then you're okay with losing, knowing that you will still be loved irrespective of the outcome, right? And how important that is.
He's quite poetic when he talks, in the way that English people aren't really. I'm such a Danophile. But yeah, he said it's like a safety net. Love is a safety net, so you can try anything, and if you lose, you'll still be loved. Then you'll probably play better.
I almost want to end the show there. Just leave it there. Just fade out, Neil.
Do you still love Scotland, Greg?
Do you still love Gareth Southgate?
Yeah, I do. What a legend. What a great bloke. Lovely lecture last week on men and toxicity. What a wonderful thing that was in society. Team Gareth all the way till I die. Alison, it was a fascinating interview. And as you say, just good lab vibes about Casper Hjulmand, I think. Casper, you're welcome on the Game podcast.
He is, yes.
At any time. Let's go back to talk about England managers, though. You mentioned Gareth Southgate, Gregor, because I just wanted to quickly mention for listeners a piece that we ran on the website about how the Times has covered previous England managerial starts. This is a great resource we have at the Times of the Times Archive, where we can send off any dates, and the brilliant archive team send us back all the pages and papers and back pages of how we covered them. And I just wanted to go through a few of them, just to remind people who may be either getting overly excited about Thomas Tuchel or a little bit worried about a lack of enthusiasm at the start. There's a long way to go. Steve McLaren.
Oh, that was a good one.
Steve McLaren, 4-0 win against Greece, the mighty Greeks, Gregor.
Absolutely.
A team and starting 11 of Robinson in goal, Gary Neville, Ashley Cole, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry. Then Gerrard on the right wing. Ooh, Gerrard on the right wing instead of Beckham. Hargreaves, Lampard and Stuart Downing on the left, solving that left-footed conundrum. And Jermaine Defoe and Peter Crouch up front. A 4-0 win. And these are what the Times... Shall I say which reporter it was, Alison?
Go for it.
George Corky. He doesn't work for us anymore. Not since Walter Winterbottom's team thrashed Northern Ireland 7-2 in 1946 has a new manager begun his reign in such convincing style. And if, in the scheme of things, the statistics count for little, a defeat on his debut did not harm Sir Alf Ramsey too much, it continued the optimistic tone established by McLaren's appointment. All in all, the Yorkshireman has enjoyed a good week. I couldn't wish for a better start, he said. It will not have made comfortable viewing for Sven-Goran Eriksson's former captain David Beckham. Banished by McLaren for the foreseeable future, the Real Madrid midfield player had the good grace to text John Terry his good wishes before kickoff. And although he is too patriotic to wish England well, it must have galled him that he was scarcely missed. And we all know how that ended, with David Beckham coming on for Steve McLaren as a substitute against Croatia to desperately try and bail England out. Honestly, we've been through the mill. The other one I just wanted to read out, which I particularly enjoyed, was the one that George mentioned there about Sir Alf Ramsey and his start. So this is also just a nice reminder that it's a long way to go. It's a long road to the World Cup. Because this was from the Times' Art Association football correspondent. Because back in those days, listeners, these reporters, no bylines, no names, no egos. Just I'm your man at the ground, and this is what I've got to say. A defeat against France, 5-2, but a team that included Bobby Moore, Bobby Charlton, Jimmy Armfield, who was captain. Lots of good players, big recognisable names. And this is what they had to say. England are out of the European Nations Cup. Shall I do this in my Pathé News voice? England are out of the European Nations Cup and must now tread a lonely path in the coming seasons before we are host to the world on our own shores in 1966. I might have. Shall I leave it there? Meanwhile, sitting here tonight in the cold wind of the Parc des Princes, one must cogitate this fact, that tonight England have had 5 goals scored against them, an indignity rarely suffered throughout the whole history of the game. See, you could say these things in 1963, Alison, couldn't you? You can't get away with that now. Anyway, the final paragraph said this. England have had their fair share of the game in midfield, but that does not matter. In the end, it is the side that thinks the more quickly inside the penalty area that wins. And on this occasion, it was the French who caught our defence napping, and our goalkeeper, perhaps dreaming of past days when he turned away rockets. Where England goes henceforth is anyone's guess. Yeah. And we won the bloody World Cup. So it just shows, listeners, we haven't got a bloody clue, really, what we are talking about. But a very fun article. Now, that's a very fun article we have published already. let's finish with a chat about a hopefully fun and informational, educational article that is going to be published this week. And Gregor, it's time to reveal the truth about this nonsense that I've been chatting for the last 2 episodes about your future career as a referee. Is it real? What's happening? What's going on?
It's not real, Tom.
Oh, no!
But I will be shadowing a group of players, some of whom I played against, and a new course, player to referee, kind of fast track 3-year course, which is a thing between the PGMOL and the PFA, and I think it's going to be fascinating because refereeing is in an interesting place, shall we say?
Yep.
And how often do we hear pundits and often former players in particular saying that referees don't have a feel for the game, or they don't, they've never played the game. What do they know? Footballers should be referees. And it's never been possible in the past because it's taken 10 years. It takes 10 years to get from the bottom level to anywhere near the top. And in that time, you earn like 50 quid at the bottom on a match day on a Sunday, like at grassroots level. So now these guys are being paid to do this course, being paid like a salary.
Yeah.
And
it's
if they're good enough,
it's incentivized.
Yeah.
It's the idea that you as a former player, as a player when you were coming to the end of your career, you're like, well, okay, well, I can either go and be a podcast star with the Times, or I can be a coach. It's adding a third avenue, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, I mean, the PFA would say there are more avenues than that. There are. They put on courses for members and subsidise them heavily.
Right.
Lots of different things, and physiotherapy, as you say, coaching. They've got a PFA business school now. So there are a lot of things that they try and get footballers to do to think about the future. This is going to be another avenue. And yeah, it's fascinating. I was there for 2 days at Warwick University the end of last week. Players like Liam Trotter, who played for Ipswich, Millwall, Forest, Bolton, had a good career, championship level. Carl Baker was at Coventry, most notably. Anthony Griffith, who I remember very well as after I broke my leg, came back. One of my first games back was against Port Vale, and he's a big, no-nonsense midfielder. And I had to go into 50-50 with him after breaking my leg. It's seared into my memory. I remember getting up and thinking, I'm okay. It was the first time I had that conversation.
That was a bit like a panto. I just took a big, deep intake.
No, it was like that's the final hurdle, and I remember it so clearly. So
did you tell him?
Yeah, we were chatting about it. Yeah,
he was like, "Yeah, I was going to nail you."
Well, he's interesting. This is the fascinating thing for me is that they've already kind of confronted moments where their instinct, which is the thing that a lot of people think gives them a chance of being good referees. Their instincts, a feel for what should and should not be a foul, when that collides with the laws of the game. So, they see something that's like, they think that's a good tackle, that's a solid tackle. But there are other considerations now. And some of them are really fascinating. Things like, what would that moment lead to? Would someone break away and score a goal and you're at the middle of a controversy, like if it's a kind of real 50-50 decision? In that case, they're basically being taught, go with the foul.
Right.
You don't want to be the centre of controversy.
So it's actually that understanding that it's not just about the tackle. We all go, that's a foul. It's big picture
No,
stuff.
there was a seminar, part of the course, which was titled, Is a Foul a Foul? It's fascinating. It's like, so it's also, that's one avenue, but there's also things like the temperature of the game, or whether it's the start of the game or the end of the game, what the score is, whether, they showed clips of a tackle that was like, you watch it and it's part of what makes the Premier League great. You think that's a great tackle, but the ball's bouncing and there's another teammates are going for it for the next tackle, and then it goes again and the next one, and like they showed a clip where someone broke a leg. Like, so if you have the opportunity to nip that in the bud in the first one, even if you think there's a bit within you thinks that's probably not a foul, they're saying you're also there to make sure the players are safe on the pitch. So these guys, even more than I would suggest, even more than your regular refs, will have an instinct to let those things go, and they have. They're going off refereeing games now. Like I spoke to Carl Baker, he's refereed 14 or 15 games in the last month. He loves it. He really loves it. They also love being back in
Back on the pitch, presumably, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I wake up now, and it's like, I have a match day again.
Yeah.
I'm
Go and put my boots on.
Yeah, it's like you said, he's running about on a sunny day and like on an academy pitch, beautiful grass, kind of, he's thinking, I'm back on a match day. This is great. Because he's been out of the game for a couple of years, and he told me that he said he had like 9 months where he was struggling to get out of bed. And it's like, the same sort of struggles that a lot of people have if you don't have that goal, that purpose every day. They've found it. A lot of these guys have found that again. And that's not the primary reason for this course, obviously, but it's a nice kind of byproduct. But yeah, it's also interesting too that they're kind of, a lot of them are my age, or maybe there's a few who are kind of just finishing, they're in their early 30s. One or two, there's one who's 28, I think is the youngest. There's one guy who's 48. Like, so it's a big investment from them for potentially, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And the PGML and the PFA are also saying that they're going to look at, which is really smart in my view, making every academy kind of graduate a qualified referee. They think that the first thing that will do is give them more of an understanding with the officials, and then if they fall out of the game, they can possibly look to take this on as well. They'll still have a lot of experiences, not to the same level as these guys I'm talking about, but they've played football at a professional level, even if only in the academy level, and it could be that they have a longer potential career as referees to look forward to. So,
but are you now a qualified referee?
No.
Gregor? Oh, that's interesting.
Well, you are.
Yes, I am.
Oh, you are. God, you really think I wasn't going to go to you straight after this? I could feel your eyes burning in the back of my head. Excuse me, Tom. I'm actually a qualified referee. As a qualified referee, what do you think of some of the things Greg has outlined there about former pros going into the game? That point, which I think is a fascinating one, about the youth players being trained in refereeing.
God, everyone involved in football should be trained in refereeing, because absolute nonsense is spoken by most pundits, because most of them haven't done a referee course. I mean, properly done the referee course, where you learn about game. You'll get people saying things like, oh, I bet the referee wouldn't have given that if it was the 50th minute or the 90th minute. And that's actually, in a way, it's true, because you are taught about game management.
I said this to them. I was like, there'd be people, when I write this piece, who will read these things and still have the feeling that, no, a referee should just see whether a foul is a foul or not on the pitch and give it accordingly. But, when they explain the context, it is quite persuasive. You've got to take a lot of things into consideration when you're making any decision.
You'd obviously told me a bit about this before Saturday, and I'm not bringing Lincoln into this, but I was at a game and there was a foul exactly like this, and my dad went, "That's not a foul," and I thought he's given that because there's a counter attack on here, and he doesn't want to let it go and be like, there'll be a goal. And it was the away team. We were at Lincoln, were at home, and my dad was like, "That's not." It's like, no, he's given that just to kill it and just to bring it back to the halfway line, so that there's not.
And as I say,
because you told me about that, I was like, I wonder if that's why he's done it.
As I say, some people will still listen to that and think that's wrong, and it's like it's an interesting sort of conversation to have, and they're having it. There's some really interesting debates there. They also had referees come in and present, and my goodness, they showed clips on a screen of some of the decisions they have to make and the speed that they have to. They almost articulate everything that's happening to follow a process, and they're all on comms and stuff, and then something else might happen. So they're still discussing and running through that first bit, and then they've got to go on to the next one. There was an incredible goal that was shown between, it was Sunderland against Preston North End, and I don't know, you might remember this, Tom. It was Wilson Isidore, ball was played through. There was a question mark of offside, but it was let go on. He's running for the ball, and he suddenly slows up because Enzo Lefebvre is coming in, which is his teammate, and makes the first contact, heads it inside, and then Wilson Isidore volleys it in, scores. And now the referee is getting in his ear from his assistant, I think Isidore's offside, and he's saying, no, Enzo Lefebvre made the first contact, so a new phase of play starts, it doesn't matter. He said, no, when he stopped, he blocked the path of the Preston North End defender, who might have got to the ball and challenged Enzo Lefebvre. So he wasn't offside. He was offside because he blocked.
He influenced
the defender. Yeah. So, the offside itself was fractional. So these guys, and there was no VAR, of course, in the Championship. So these guys, they took 38 seconds to come to it, and it was the right decision. But the referee in question had to there was outrage about it, and you had, I think it was, who was it, Clinton Morrison on Soccer Saturday going, "This is disgrace." He was like, he couldn't, they couldn't actually articulate what had gone on. So the referee in question as well had to go onto a call on the Monday, and actually explain it all to the CEO and everyone of the club. Like, this is what, and I actually said in this class, I was like, guys, are the laws not making your job so hard?
Yeah.
Like, could we not just simplify the
And
laws
they
a
said,
little
"No
bit
comment."
here? Well, yeah, basically. So, really, really interesting. You do come away. I did come away from it, just from these 2 days, with more of an appreciation of how hard it is to be a referee for lots of reasons. And I'm also, as I say, I'm going to follow these guys, their journey.
Yeah.
And, hopefully with a little bit of appreciation, because I could, in theory, have been in their shoes.
Yeah.
Of what it's going to be like for these guys to learn how to be a ref, having been a footballer.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. You can read Gregor's first dispatch from this refereeing course on the Times website on Wednesday. No, don't fancy being a referee, but you've already been a footballer. Now you've been a journalist. Any other careers that we missed out down the years? I just thought we'd finish with our little careers that we could have had, because I feel Hamza, we need to have some good ones here, don't we? Because we've got a journalist and a qualified referee and a novelist to my right. We've got a former footballer and a journalist to my left. Just me and you, just normal journalists, really, aren't? Although you're doing your coaching badges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did a bit of coaching.
Yeah.
My uni team were unbeaten. COVID ended the season, but we got promoted above the team that was above us. Yeah, we were unbeaten. So
You're unbeaten.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Did you play some funky tactics?
I bet you did,
we
too.
played 3-6. 3-6-1.
3-6.
Yeah.
He's not joking,
the
listeners.
wing
Either.
back.
He's not joking.
So it works really nicely. Then one of the subs was like, "Oh, let me come on." I was like, "Yeah, you go on at wing back." And he just did not track back in the whole thing. I was like, "Dude, what are you doing, man?" He's like, "I want to play centre forward." I was like, "No, come off." And
Still
the
angry
problem
about
is as well, like when you train, there's always for many people, there's an instinct to get involved in training. So like the ball would come across, and I sort of dummy up. I'm like, "What am I doing? I meant to just run the sort of the session," but you get that itch to sort of kick the ball a lot. But you just got to stand back and.
There you go. Hamza, a coach as well. I'm going to have to add that to your intro at the start. Alison, any other careers that you've failed? Not
Failed at? Failed at? I don't think so. I think if I'm not
Get it,
failed
Alison.
at anything. I did once fail at being bar staff,
Right.
because it was one of those bars where you
Had to serve drinks.
have to serve drinks but calculate what the bar tab is. Like,
So crap at maths is what you're saying.
so I just made it up
Good with
all
words.
night.
Good with words,
It's
bad with numbers.
It's roughly, I don't know, is that roughly £3 that drink? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I do a round it up, and then at the end of the night, the owner of the bar did the takings. He said, "You're never coming back."
There you go. I was quite good as a bar staff when I was a teenager. Used to do a lot of the corporate boxes at the Manchester Evening News Arena. A lot of, all the gigs, all the gals, lovely. Oh, aren't you tall? Ain't he tall? Oh, bloody hell. Oh, bring us another rosé, darling. Yeah, lovely. Oh, he's good, isn't he? Absolutely loved it.
Did they all say, "Oh,
Good
it
tips.
could be a ballet dancer"? He could.
Yeah, that's the one. Or a florist, maybe, given my knowledge of flowers. Tulips, alströmerias, lilies, all the jobs.
I'm allergic to lilies, so if I'm ever ill,
Like
don't
cats.
send
Okay,
lilies.
so I won't bring any lilies.
It'll
Okay.
knock me out.
There you go. Finish with a bit of flower chat. Never saw that coming on the Game podcast. Hamza Khalikluna, Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for listening. We'll be back on Thursday and we hope to have a little EFL show for you this week as well. We'll see you then.